Chung, 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 chung. Oh, sorry. I'm on camera.
It's cool that it's been here the entire time Low Madrone, our brand, has been here. It's been sitting up here on this windy hill,
Yep.
just being a grapevine.
Well, it's actually a tree.
No, I'm talking about the vines.
Oh, those.
Oh, it's not a tree.
No. But what's cool about the tree was I was told that it wasn't looking so good. Okay, well, it looks fine. And the cool thing, it's got a little offspring pushing out the side, so its next generation's growing off the tree too, which is super cool.
I'm sure the offspring is going to produce a better tree, honestly.
You think?
Yeah.
Seems
almost guaranteed.
Seems a little unlikely. The little tree will probably it up.
Westphalia, it's calling you. Get in the van and hike your homeland. Bring the family, they wanna be there to see a show in a low back chair. That's how the call-ins mix.
What are you doing in there? Well, you're setting up. Okay, so here we are, the final episode of the Tasting in the Westy for now. Who knows, maybe it'll come back. But for the last episode, we're doing the classic, the Cabernet Sauvignon from the what used to be known as the Carver Vineyard. When I first started buying from this, it's up on the York Mountain Appellation. York Mountain Appellation was founded in somewhere about 1983, same time frame actually as the Paso Robles appellation was created. And this appellation was pushed and created by the Goldman family, Steve and Max Goldman, who owned York Mountain Winery at that time. Of course, prior to that, the York family owned that winery and hence named the mountain, etc. But they created the appellation. It's on the very western edge of the Paso Robles appellation. I think it was 83 was the exact date. The York Mountain Winery was something like the 24th winery in California to be registered, which is pretty incredible. It may have been even sooner than that, but in my mind it's 24 or 21. So pretty incredible, a pretty historic site. You know, what a visionary family to come here, and I mean it's pretty rugged country here. Imagine what it was like then, whenever that was.
Is there any York Mountain wine floating around? I don't know if I've ever had a bottle. That'd be cool to have.
I have a bottle of York Mountain Quintessence Port in my cellar. Yeah.
In the cellar?
Yeah. I don't know what it's like, but hey. That tasting room, which is now Epic's tasting room, was consistently every single year voted the best tasting room in the North County. It was a big fireplace, and this old guy Mel worked behind the bar who was hilarious, big suspenders and just a larger-than-life character. And it was just packed always. Classic times. I mean,
and when did that close down?
Seismic, after the earthquake. It was the last of it. You know, I mean, I used to work with Steve in that, so I used to help him out down there, and it was real. It was like a real old cellar. I mean, hard work. The original pumps. We drove past one of the original pumps on the way in here. They're run on belts from God knows what, steam. I don't know what was running them, but it was ancient stuff. I mean, it was historic business, and yeah, you go in this day, you can see a lot of it, and there's a lot of great pictures, I believe, in the tasting room of Epic now. But ultimately, Max passed away. Steve started Stevens Cellars, and York Mountain went away, and so Stevens Cellars was the only winery on the mountain at that point. Eventually Steve retired. He sold the winery to the Armstrongs, who created Epic. They've done great work with the history of the place, as well as redoing the Goldman or the York's house, you know, which Max, when I was around, Max lived. The work that Jordan Fiorentini is doing at Epic is incredible. They've got beautiful vineyards, some up here, all over Paso, all over West Paso at least, but Jordan's making some beautiful wines without question. So the other project of note up here is the Royal Nonsuch Farm, which is owned by Anthony and Hilary Yant. They don't have a winery per se up here, but they have a vineyard. Incredible site, a farm really. They farm animals and But the interesting thing for this, in this context, is their vineyard, and they're making some beautiful wines. Anthony is the winemaker at Denner, and I would highly recommend you seek them out. So when I started working in Adelaide with John Munch in 1992, the first job he gave me was to taste through he gave me a notepad and a pen and put me in the cellar and said, taste every lot, write notes, and come back to me with what you think. And I tasted the first vintage off of the Carver Vineyard that day, 1990, and the only thing I remember from my notes that day was that this vineyard should be bottled by itself. But the vineyard was planted actually by Steve Goldman and John Rains. Munch may or may not have had a part of it. He'll say that he did, but who knows. So it was in 1996 I decided, we're not going to do it at Adelaide, so I'm going to do it myself. So I purchased, I think it was 4 tons of fruit from the Carver Vineyard and made the wine. And there was the single Madrone tree that sits in the vineyard, and John Rains, who farmed it at that point, Steve Goldman and Munch, everyone, the locals called it the Low Madrone Vineyard. So I went to the Carvers and all involved and asked permission to use that for my label. And everyone didn't really know why I asked and said, yeah, of course, go for it. So this label is a rendition of the tree that's right outside the van here that our good friend Ted Emmerich did for us. 96 was the first vintage, and we've done a vintage of Cab from this vineyard every year since, except there's a couple of exceptions. 98 we didn't, because the weather was so bad it just didn't work out. And then there was a small period around in the early 2000s, like 3 years, when we lost access to the fruit. We still bought Cab from the York Mountain appellation and filled in that space. So, but for the most part,
where did we buy Cab from?
Shell Mountain, which is another vineyard that's actually higher up than this on Shadow Canyon. Yeah. Is that funny?
Yeah, that was okay.
It was great Cab. It worked great, but I mean, as soon as I was able to get Cab from here again, I did. And our block that we buy from is right here around the tree where we're parked. And then traditionally, that's what it's always been.
Keep with the history.
Yeah, I mean, it's important, I think. It's important to me anyway, and it's a beautiful Cab. I mean, it's different up here. It's different up in York Mountain, as you can see hopefully from the footage that we're taking today. It's cooler, it's windier, it's foggier, it rains more. As Steve Goldman always used to say, we don't measure rain in inches up here, we measure rain in feet. And so it's a very different appellation than the rest of Paso Robles, and there is no question about that. Just looking out the window and seeing the trees and the green and the topography that we're surrounded by, it's a special place. It really is. And so as long as I am able to buy fruit from this vineyard, I will do so, and I will make this Cabernet. The vineyard is now owned by the McNicholls, Bill and Heidi McNichol, but it is entirely leased by Calcaris, who farm it and look after it and are generous enough to sell me a couple of tons a year. We don't make a lot of this, and we rarely pour it in the tasting room. It's pretty much something that will always be available to our club members and always be available to anyone that wants to buy a bottle, but we don't push it. We drink it. It's just the foundation of what Low Madrone is, basically.
We drink it, that's for sure.
We do drink it. And this, I've been through a couple of different phases during the production of this wine since 96. In the early days, like in 96, it was all neutral barrels, and the honest truth is I couldn't afford new barrels, so that was my option. And then later I started using a little more American oak in the style that I was used to with Adelaide. And then I went back a little bit to neutral, and now in these vintages I came back to the American oak a little bit because I like it, and it really does resonate as the wine that I was making in those Adelaide days with Munch. And that's important to me, and also to Marcy, your mother.
I think one thing that you did fail to mention in your monologue was that we actually made wine. Low Madrone was made up here. Am I correct in saying that?
That's absolutely true.
And that was where the Epic Winery currently is.
There was a great period of time where I actually made all of the wine at Stephen's Cellars. I shared that space with Steve, and he was such an icon of our industry and the nicest of men. But they were great great things about that time. Like, you'd come up to work and there'd always be a half-smoked cigar sitting on the forklift, and the box was always in the fittings rack. There was always a box of cigars, and there was always a bottle of brandy sitting on the lab counter. Just great, different time, different place, and yeah, there was a lot of history in that building, and a lot of frogs. You used to have to stuff paper towels in the ends of every pump and every hose, because if you didn't in the morning, they'd be full of frogs. We tried to buy the facility, but
we're actually gonna do a more upscale thing than Epic did.
I'm actually serious. We almost had it, and then Bill Armstrong just had a little bit more money than me.
He's like, okay, buddy, nice offer.
2014, York Mountain Appellation. I love it. Cabernet Sauvignon. I mean, clearly, there's the dark berry, the black currant that I find so appealing with this wine. The American oak is clear, obviously. I mean, there's a little toasted coconutty note, which I don't dislike at all. I love it.
It's soft though. It's not overbearing.
It's not overbearing. No, it's not dominant at all. There's clear tobacco to me, and it's dark. It's deep.
It's got such a distinct York Mountain cab flavor, or
yeah,
our specific cab, but
from
up here.
This vineyard, Carver Vineyard Cab. The greenness, I guess, not a nice term probably for cab, but that's what I get from up here in the cool, and it's defined by that to me. I get like jalapeno kind of character.
Little peppers for sure.
The hallmark of, and the thing I love most about this wine is the fermentation. When you're smelling that black currant, the incredible black currant notes that come out of that fermenter. It's the most distinctive fermentation, I think, that I do. I mean, I love it every year. It's a moment I wait for.
There's some underlying spice or something that I haven't smelled enough spices, but it smells like something.
That's really profound. The palate is good. It's I wouldn't say it's soft. I'd say it's quite structured, but it's not overly tannic. You don't get a lot of those cab tannins. I think it's got weight, but it's not angular or difficult by any means. It's not drying. Put this on the table with a nice steak.
Exactly. Like, where do we go with food?
Classic steakhouse: a steak and a baked potato and a great salad.
Go down to Jocko's with a bottle of this.
Take a bottle of this to Jocko's, and boom! There's the wheelhouse right there. We should go quickly while Westy's still fishing.
Oh my! We have to. We got to go to Jocko's with Westy.
What?
Yes.
Here's to another 20-something years of.
I'll take care of it.
Good.
Because you're probably not gonna.
American oats.
20 years.
That's how the call-ins mix.
Maybe it's you. Maybe it's all you. Pressed and fermented cold.
Picked at the right time.
Picked at the right time, bottled with minimal SO2.